Hello, everyone. Just letting you know that you're in the right place. Going to allow about another minute or so before we get things going. But thanks for joining us. Again, hello and welcome, everyone. Going to allow about another 30 seconds for everyone to get filed in, but we appreciate you joining us and looking forward to the presentation. Okay, an official hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast, From Penalties to Prevention, a compliance-first approach to reducing OSHA risks, sponsored by AMCS Group. My name is Kevin Drewley. I'm an associate editor with Safety and Health Magazine and will be moderating today's session. Thanks for joining us. In a few minutes, we'll start our presentation, but first let's review some preliminary items. The views of today's speakers and organizations are their own and may not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health Magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not necessarily mean the council or magazine endorses those items. At the end of today's webcast, we'll conduct a question and answer session. To ask a question, simply click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, and click the Send button. Feel free to ask your question at any time during the presentation. You don't have to wait for the question and answer session to begin. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but because of the large number of participants today, we might not get to every question. Any unanswered questions will be forwarded along to today's speakers. At the end of the webcast, you'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey, and we'll let you know more about that after the presentation. This webcast will be archived, so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, please visit safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Our speakers today are Phil Welch, Dean Bortz, and Conrad Branchen. Phil serves as General Manager, EHS at AMCS Group, and brings more than 25 years of global experience in operational excellence, manufacturing, and services in both facility and corporate EHS leadership roles. Dean is an OSHA consultant at Lancaster Safety Consulting and has more than 30 years of experience in engineering, construction, education, and safety leadership. He conducts safety audits, OSHA training, and compliance consulting across industries. Conrad is a health and safety consultant at Lancaster Safety Consulting, and he supports clients in areas such as addressing OSHA citations and building strong safety cultures. His work includes overseeing daily safety operations on complex projects and stepping in after serious incidents to ensure compliance and risk mitigation. Again, we thank you all for tuning into this presentation. Phil, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depends on where you are, of course, in the world. So today we are partnering with Lancaster Safety Consulting and National Safety Council to present to you a panel of From Penalties to Prevention, a compliance-first approach to reducing OSHA risks. On the panel today, we have myself, of course, General Manager of EHS at AMCS. We also have Dean from Lancaster Safety Consulting, and also Conrad from Lancaster Safety Consulting as well. And I'm sure between all three of us, we probably have about 50 to 60 years of EHS experience of some description. Moving on to the agenda, so what we'll do is we'll cover firstly the cost of non-compliance, your guide to year-round safety, documentation best practices, compliance training programs, incident reporting, and record keeping. And then, of course, at the end, we will take the questions that you may have going forward. All right, so let's get started. All right, so very powerful slide in terms of what lies beneath, in terms of a contributing factor, as what we see is at the top of the iceberg of what's visible. But as you can see, can you as an employer actually afford a accident? So there's an example here, and so I'll let Dean go through the logic on this slide and the numbers, as I'm sure he'll much better to explain it than I am. Dean?
Phil, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today and all of those out there listening. What's interesting about this, if we take a simple situation, and again, employee using a ladder, tries to reach a work area, they lose their balance, fall 7 feet to the floor, they suffer a back and shoulder injury. Well, the things that we see immediately, of course, are the direct costs. Okay, the ER, the trip to the first responders, the medical bills, and the compensation for the worker. And if you utilize one of the formulas shown on the Occupational Safety Health Administration, OSHA website, the direct costs for this are about $38,000. What you often don't see are two other things you really have to think about, hence the iceberg, and that is the indirect costs and under or underinsured costs. This is not just the employee, but also other workers, assisting the injured. You can have decreased productivity, morale on a project or in a factory. Replacement worker and their wages, let alone you look at the supervisory time required by the owner, as well as to investigate the accident, documentation. Then you have follow-up, damage to the work, delays in schedule, damage to materials and equipment, potential OSHA inspection, maybe a project or plant shutdown, let alone the expense to investigate. And obviously, you're not making money when this is happening. You also will increase your Bureau of Worker Compensation's costs, something called EMR, Experience Modification Ratio, which compares how much you pay in premiums to how much you make in claims, let alone OSHA penalties and citations, your economic and opportunity costs, and then of course there's the media and reputation you get. So if we do some calculations by the numbers, the 1.9 million, the total accident cost is about 190,000, but it's going to require you to generate an additional $1.9 million just to offset the loss. And that's with just a 10% profit margin. Obviously, if the profit margins are smaller in your industry, it's going to require more revenue. And this just gets you back to square. So these are the numbers, but also the people involved. So I really appreciate using this iceberg because it makes you think about the fact what you really don't see. Bill?
Great, awesome. Thanks, Dean. That was very well explained. But Conrad, let me ask you a question. What are the most common sort of OSHA violations that you see, and why do they keep happening?
Well, the most common citation that we see, violation that we see, would fall into fall protection. I mean, that's kind of something that I notice anytime I even commute to work, which I drive about 20 minutes from my home to the office. And I mean, on my way, I might pass 3 roofing contractors, and I would say if I would stop at any of them on any given day, I would find something. It's not always going to be a fall hazard. However, that's what we do see most in the, I guess, in the roofing workplace. But there's also violations, hazard communications. That's repeated offense many times. And then it gets into program and training violations and everything that goes into that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I mean, you always see the top 10 OSHA violations come out on an annual basis, and those ones are up there. I think full protection is always in the top 3, if not top 1, and then I think full protection training is in there as well. So, like you say, from a low-hanging fruit, I guess, it's definitely one that's easily picked up and very visible as well. But why do you think they keep happening? Is it a reactive safety culture? Is it, what's the sort of root cause? Lack of training, ignorance? What do you think it is?
Yeah, lack of training and ignorance. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, you always, from job site to job site, you always have those workers who do believe that they are invincible. Those cowboys that are going to go up there and climb without the protection, that are going to think, hey, I can get this done quick. I can knock this out and, move on to the next one. And they don't stop to think, what if something were to happen? They don't think about, maybe their family at home, and returning safely. But I mean, there's definitely many factors that come into play, and I mean, OSHA's job is to make sure that, employees do return home from work, you know, and I mean, ultimately, whenever it comes down to it, um, there are things that employers are able to do to make sure that, you know, their employees are working safe. However, it's not always, I guess, reflected with each safety policy, with every safety program.
Gotcha. Alrighty, thanks very much indeed. Right, moving on to the next one. So from cost to profit. So after having a discussion with you guys a week or so ago, you know, it was quite apparent that, you know, if you don't invest in safety, then there's no sort of return on that investment, and it's an investment, not really a cost. So, you know, when it comes to the amount of dollars that are spent on job-related injuries, we have close to what 200 billion, you know, and that's just the US alone as well. I mean, that's numbers coming from the National Safety Council as well. But with the other sort of numbers of the average return, Dean, I'll throw this to you, sir. What are your sort of you know, how are these numbers sort of calculated? How do we see the actual you know, return on investment for this sort of thing?
Phil, that's an excellent question. And again, part of it is the direct indirect. If you think about what you pay as far as for training, you pay in workers' comp, liability insurance. When there is an incident or a recordable situation where there's hospitalization or, heaven forbid, a fatality, you start looking at the amount of money you pay out. I'll give you a perfect example. I witnessed an individual scratch their cornea. They were utilizing a 3/16 center punch and a hammer, taking some roll pins out of some machine assemblies. Because the head of the impact tool, the center punch, had mushroomed over, they hit the tool not square, a chip came off and scratched their cornea. The day of the incident cost the company about $2,000 in direct costs. It took them over 5 months to finish basically paying for that incident, and it was over $60,000 by the time they were done. All because someone didn't recognize the danger of a $7 tool. And I think a lot of this has to do with, we've always done it that way. Or, let's just get it done. I've done this 1,000 times. Never happened before. Didn't think we needed it. Didn't think anybody would notice. I'm just passing through. Let's just get her done. I think that's my favorite. There's all kinds of excuses for this. And it's really simple. Safety pays. Accidents cost when you're looking at dollars and cents. And that's just the financial part. You get into the people part, well, that's a whole other situation.
Absolutely. So why, and this is for Conrad, why are some companies still managing compliance in a sort of, you know, ignorant way like this, and manually, you know, despite all of these sort of risks? You know, I know they're not aware of the costs. You know, if that serious accident happens, they don't do anything about it. They do probably a really poor root cause analysis, or they just, you know, they don't know what they don't know. But why do you think these companies are still managing everything very manually, and they're not really aware of this payback that they can get?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it does seem like there's times where production is taking the, you know, is what the company is going to be looking at. You know, it's coming first over the safety of their employees. Not something that we always see, definitely. However, I mean, that's when we tend to see most errors, you know, in safety. You know, and whenever we are seeing companies, you know, taking steps towards safety, it's something that I mean, we see, I mean, that we gladly appreciate, you know, and I mean, whenever they are kind of putting it on the back burner and thinking, okay, we need to get something done, we have a big job, we need to get out, you know, that's whenever we might tend to see, you know, companies run into more issues.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah, I've heard of production first, you know, the good old production first instead of safety first, you know.
Comrade, you're right. The funny thing about that is, Every time I've seen the pressure on, either internally or externally from customer demands, market orders, delays, I call it the hazards of hurry. When you start doing things quickly rather than correctly and safely, that's when it costs you a fortune. The numbers don't lie. It's really simple. If I am deliberate and I take my time, I will get it done right the first time, and I'll get it done safely. So what it comes down to is meeting and exceeding the customer expectation, obviously staying on or ahead of schedule, on or under budget, safely. As that adding that last part is going to put you over the top. Simple compliance with the OSHA requirements get you started, but it's going to require a commitment top to bottom and an understanding that the opportunity cost when I'm not safe is unacceptable.
Very, very good. Thank you, gents, for sharing. I mean, I used to be part of a manufacturing company many years ago, and investigating a twisted ankle once, and it turned out the operator was hurrying down the stairs, literally probably jumped from, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 steps before he reached the bottom, and therefore twisting his ankle, because the line was about to break, or there was an issue with the machine. But where do you think this pressure comes from? Do you think the supervisors physically tell them, you can work unsafe, or do you think it's just a self-pressure that the person puts on themselves because they want to do a good job?
I would
My
say a little
experience,
bit of
all the,
both.
my
Yeah,
experience, all the above, yes.
right, right. I mean, there's definitely situations that, I mean, OSHA would define it as a willful violation if it's a supervisor that is putting that type of pressure on an employee, to go out there and violate, to go out there and just go bypass a hazard. That's going to be looked at by OSHA as a willful violation. OSHA can't cite an employee. However, those employees, sometimes they might put that kind of pressure on themselves. So whenever an employer is tasked with, the job to make sure that these employees are working safe, they're going to have 4 elements of program. They're going to need to make sure that they train the employees on the program. They're going to want to conduct inspections and follow up with those inspections with corrective actions and disciplinary actions. Whenever, anytime they see these employees that, might be thinking, okay, I need to go out there and get the job done. I need to do this to impress my boss, or to get home quickly for the day. They need to step in. They need to step in and make sure, that employee understands that, number one is safety, over production.
It's really simple. We all look at what are our costs and what is the revenue generated. And we're often told, improve your quality is one of the best ways to improve market share, reduce costs, improve margins, production, etc. But right beside it is safety. Again, the numbers don't lie. And Conrad's exactly right. It's amazing when we start, instead of saying, hey, this work is dangerous, people get hurt. Oh, well, it's just part of the work. And getting from a reactive approach to a proactive approach, and taking our policies and procedures and looking at our practices and having each inform the other and adjust accordingly. Most of this is common sense, which I think unfortunately doesn't seem to be common. And so as a result, exactly right, it basically comes from a, oh, by the way approach to making safety a core value. Again, watch what happens to the bottom line. By the way, watch what happens to retention of employees, the morale of employees, and let's face it, when people are happy, they're enjoying their work, you're doing well, boy, you don't have nearly as many problems as when people are muttering about, gee, I wonder if Joe's going to lose his leg, or boy, I hope Sue doesn't die.
Oof. Yeah, good, fair point. Alrighty, thanks, gents. All right, so the next couple of slides is more of a guide to a year-round safety and compliance. So obviously, Lancaster Safety Consulting, they do a OSHA type of inspection for as one of the services, as well as training, and I'm sure there's a slide on it later. But in terms of the documentation side of things, what do you specifically look for post-accident, or when you do an inspection? You know, what's sort of requested? I know there's someone's listed here, but you know, what makes up the, you know, have it audit ready, and how can we be more proactive with that, Conrad?
Yeah, I mean, documentation is everything. You know, if it's not documented in OSHA's eyes, it never happened. You know, and that's exactly right. Whenever, I mean, you look at any disciplinary action. You know, if a contractor's out there and they see their employees violating their safety policy, you know, they might give that verbal warning. You know, they might, hey, put your safety glasses back on. You know, they might tell them 100 times verbally, you know, but not one time document it. You know, how can you say that that would be effective? You know, you can't really think back to every single time that you might have told the employee. You know, that employee doesn't understand, you know, if he violates again, what might the consequences be, you know, if they're going to kind of go up in scale, you know. So I mean, documentation is something that we look at, or disciplinary actions, you know, is something that we're going to be looking at. We might take a look at, say, a company's 300 logs, evaluate trends, you know, see where a company's greatest hazards may be, you know. Besides that, of course, going through the job site and making sure that, you know, there is an adequate inspection report, you know, a checklist that the company would want to go through, you know, make sure that they understand, you know, find and fix, you know, whenever they do have hazards, what they're going to do to make sure that they mitigate them, you know. And then, I mean, training records, if, you know, they have a company may conduct an annual training, you know, but now what does that company do whenever they hire someone? You know, they don't want to say it's June, they just had their annual training in May. You know, they're not going to wait to have that employee trained until, you know, June of 2026. Make sure that they do have record of, you know, that employee understanding the hazards that are associated with their workplace. You know, so make sure that they have a onboarding process where that employee is going to get adequately trained. You know, and all that's going to be in documentation. You know, it's going to be documented, and I mean, whenever program related elements, there's definitely for each topic that is relevant to a company's work scope. You know, that company is going to be required to have certain policies documented, programs in writing, you know. And I mean, making sure that they're accessible by the employees. Employees need to be able to understand the policies that are that, you know, they're to be following, you know. So I mean, programs, inspections, 300 logs, training records, disciplinary actions. I mean, I would say those are the main elements, the main items that we would expect to see documented by any company. But I'm sure Dean also has a lot of experience going out into the field, and I'm sure he'll be able to give you a rundown of what he looks for.
Conrad, you're right. Those are excellent items. The other thing I look for is it could be a production meeting, marketing, sales. And my suggestion is, why don't you add safety as an agenda item and have that part of every meeting you ever hold? I don't care if it's company-wide or, you know, just a group of folks working on a particular production line. Or it could be a group of skilled tradespeople figuring out how to attach some plumbing. It doesn't matter. The point being is, when you start doing that and being proactive, what happens is that you're right. What Conrad mentioned gives you direction, but how you get more proactive is by having that as an agenda item, by bringing this up on every possible occasion. I love how one of the Lancaster videos starts. Not another safety training, better get another cup of coffee. And it shouldn't be that way because, the eyes roll. Oh, safety meeting, roll the eyes. No, it should not be that way. And there's a lot of things that can be done to get engagement. I also like to take a look at areas of a plant or areas of a construction project. Also, when I do a mock inspection, I like to find fact, not fault. And invariably, I will find some best practices. So I try very hard. It's easy to point out the defects or deficiencies so much more than when people are doing things well or correctly or safely. So I try very hard to make sure we do that. And you can find that. One area that definitely is very easy visually and simple is what's called housekeeping. Does the project, does the facility, are they well organized? Is there a lot of scrap lying on the floor? No one expects to eat off the floor of the factory or the job site on a construction project or a grain silo. But the point being is, if there is some semblance there of order and some method to the madness, that's usually an indication of a company that's decently run, as well as a good safety track record, because those things go hand in hand. They really do. So I like to look at things like that and point out possibilities when we're doing the walk around. And then when we have the mock closing conference, I will point out, here is what might be suggested by the OSHA inspector. The OSHA inspector is like a detective. They're there to gather information. They're not going to write up a citation. They're not going to close you down or say, here, give me a check for this much. Their job is to gather information, and utilizing their area director will then determine if or should a citation be issued for what alleged violation and then what recommended penalty. So then we go through that process of what that looks like and make sure that people understand that, again, this is a penalty, as Conrad mentioned, to the company, not to the individual. Point being is, find facts, not fault.
Perfect. I think that's a great way of describing the process. In terms of additional best practices, of course, a cloud-based system that has everything housed in there, like the training records, so it's easily accessible. And then, if things can be automated, like those corrective action, preventive actions, and some dashboards to give you the insights of what's the biggest risk and what's the most common hazard, in which area, specifically. So for best practices, a lot of people are coming off the paper and going digital. So a lot of these things can be generated in that way, and document management as well. But a good segue to training. So we have the proactive sort of training culture, and we have here the hierarchy of controls. So I'll let Dean go through this one, and from a training perspective, from like a reactive versus a proactive sort of way of doing the training for the employees.
Phil, thank you. Boy, if the folks in on this webcast, I would encourage you, get nothing else, burn this into your policy procedure and how you approach things. And I think it's just nature. We go to work and we put on our safety footwear, eyeglasses, whatever it is that we put out there, and let's get to work. Okay, great. Oh, I'm going to be working with a material that requires respiratory protection. No problem. Let's go get the respirator, put it on, do the tests. Yep, ready to go. As a result, because we're in constant use of the personal protective equipment, or PPE, we forget this is the least effective and the last line of defense. So if you want to build a proactive safety culture, that's at the bottom. What's at the top is elimination. Can I physically remove the hazard? Well, no, I can't. I have to use this material. Okay. If I can't do that, can I substitute a different kind of material or replace the hazard with something else? Well, no, not really. I can't do that. Okay. How about engineering controls? What do you mean by that? Can I isolate myself from the moving parts? Well, then I've eliminated the hazard. Can I use a guard that will protect me and clothing, materials, and tools as I walk by from that moving chain or belt? And by the way, if that chain or belt breaks, will the guard contain it? I have engineered the hazard out of there. Or can I use a wet method instead of a dry method, say for cutting a block or brick? Or if I have doing welding or brazing, can I use a point of operation suction or vacuum system that pulls away the slag and the fumes? When I do those things, I've engineered the hazard out of it. If I can't do that, I can minimize the exposure through engineering controls and then administrative controls. Work practices, worker rotation. Let's do the heavy, difficult, challenging work early in the shift versus late, if I can. Signage, training, constant training, these kinds of things. And so really, I really like this inverted pyramid. So again, if I can eliminate it, great. If I can't do that, let's do a substitution. If not that, let's use our engineering controls, our administrative controls, and let's use that personal protective equipment as a last line of defense. And by the way, respiratory protection is PPE. Think about it. Do you drive different ways to work every day? Probably not. Why not? Because you get in a habit. The same thing is true with this. So I really like this, and again, the PPE needs to be the last line of defense and not replace stronger safety controls that are proactive and far more effective.
Excellent. Thank you, Dean. Alrighty. So OSHA recording best practices. So, Conrad, what's the sort of key to building a culture of consistent incident and near-miss reporting? I know there's a diagram here, but what can we leverage to make a really good reporting and system?
Yeah. So this diagram here, it points more towards what is recordable in OSHA's eyes. I mean, there is the OSHA 300 log, the Form 300, where, you are required as an employer to document certain incidents that may be beyond first aid, or if, say, they have an employee that loses consciousness or needs to take prescription medicine. Just there are items that do need to be recorded onto an OSHA log. However, whenever we go into record keeping for an employer, you do want to keep record of every single incident, whether it's a near miss or it is a severe incident. So there is a place to maintain those recordable incidents. You don't want to over record on those 300 logs. However, for record keeping purposes, in general, every near miss can be followed up with the same type of effort as a serious incident. Because if an employee may have been standing, 2 steps to the left whenever, something fell off the roof, it could have been that severe incident that you would be putting on that 300 log. But I mean, best practice, I would say, would definitely be to, document everything, every single near miss, treat it as an incident, follow up, conduct employee interviews, make sure that steps are being taken to make sure that it doesn't occur again. That potential incident, doesn't turn into an actual incident. But that diagram, it is a rundown of what is recordable per OSHA. So I mean, if an employee has to transfer jobs, you're going to make sure that it's on the 300 log. If there's going to be days away from work, that's going to be on the 300 log. But yeah, I mean, whenever it comes to documenting any type of incident, with all the resources there are in the world today, why would you not, make sure that everything is documented? It's not like employers have file cabinets that, they really need to dig deep and find every single record. I mean, there are resources that companies have nowadays. They can really find ways to organize everything, from near misses to serious incidents, and making sure steps, an incident investigation is always one thing, but how you follow through with it, make sure that, the steps that are taken are signed off by, the manager in the area where that incident occurred. Make sure that the employees do have a chance to review it, and make sure it's reviewed with them, so they understand, what could have been, what could have happened, but yeah, I mean, I would say from a near miss all the way to that serious incident, you want to make sure that everything is recorded.
Conrad, you're exactly right, because historically it's always, I don't want to be the person that has to erase the number days since last incident and turn it to 0. So the tendency is not to report things at all, let alone near misses, or as I could call them, near hits. But basically that's just not true anymore. Reporting near hits and near misses, frankly, is encouraged. It has to be, because those are the things, it's just a matter of time. It's not, wow, they might get hurt doing it that way. They will get hurt doing it that way. It's just a matter of time. So really the key is that even the major incidents and things, while obviously it gets a lot of the attention, documentation and time and energy and effort and resources, frankly, if you can work on the near misses and get those reduced and minimize them, hopefully eliminate them, you never get to the major incidences.
Yeah, and I do work as an SGE, a special government employee, and as we are part of the voluntary protection program, we have the opportunities to go from the enforcement side of kind of focus to more of investigating a company's overall safety program. And whenever we do so, that is one of the things that we profess is, those near misses. If you go to a company and, they have 0 incidents, but then they have 0 near misses, it's like, how much can you really trust that? I love to go to see, this company had 5 near misses in the past 2 months, and it really shows that the culture is taking safety seriously, but yeah, it's I mean, that's exactly right, Dean. Whenever it comes down to it, near misses or near hits can, drastically change a company's safety program.
What's really interesting is when you're with a client and doing the walk around part of the inspection, and one of the coworkers of the person you're with does something that is pretty obviously silly or dangerous, and the person gets a little embarrassed, I'll be right back, and they run over and grab the person, and you can see it's quite animated discussion. This guy is here, he's an OSHA inspector, you're what? That kind of thing. Yeah. The key is that you never know who's watching, but that's not the point. It's not about that. It's about doing the right thing the right way, safely. It really is. And so it takes everybody, from the newest hire to the person retiring this Friday, from the CEO down to the person that empties the wastebasket. Everybody has input into this stuff, and everybody's got to be on the same sheet of music. And so utilizing this information, it helps give you direction. It helps direct your attention to areas that need improvement that you can do better at. So you keep on keeping on the things you do excellently, but let's start plugging some of those holes.
Alrighty. So, Dean and Conrad, not sure how familiar you are with some of the technology that's out there. Maybe you use something yourself to create your reports. But in terms of tracking the right data, as you mentioned just now, in terms of the hazards, the root causes, the trends, and then the reporting side of it as well. So, give people the tools to be able to report, whether it's scanning a QR code, that's somewhere around the site, to then report a near miss or a near hit. As you mentioned, try and encourage people to do that. I used to work for a company that they created this calculation based on the number of accidents they had last year or something. They said, oh yeah, we need to get 10,000 near misses this year, and they kept following that as a metric. And I just, I was a bit flabbergasted, to be fair. And one other site as well that I visited. It's in an Eastern European country, but they, like you said, they reported very little in terms of first aids. They had a couple of thousand people, and they actually employed 3 nurses as well. So I'm thinking, well, if you're that safe, why do you have 3 nurses? And then of course I go into the the nurses sort of little mini hospital thing, and they've got paperwork going up to the ceiling on the table. So it's quite obvious that something was going on. So you can't pull the wool over this one's eyes. But when it comes to data and awareness and things like that, people have to see what's really underneath the waterline of the iceberg concept that we saw earlier. And for those things that we can investigate and we can fix, then we won't be seeing too much at the top, in terms of injuries and incidents. So I would definitely suggest getting those trends analysis and those insights by using technology. It gives people the tools, and it's live data. You haven't got to worry about finding a piece of paper to write something on or taking a photo, with a camera, then uploading it on an email later. Everything's accessible right there on an app potentially. So from future proofing, I love the phrase future proof. So what we do here at AMCS is, we have a real core package of EH&S solutions that we offer. They're including the incident management, the near misses, the dashboards, the analytics, the risk assessment, you name it. It's available from AMCS. So in terms of the risk software, Dean or Conrad, either one of you gents, have you come across any of your customers, and are they using some software, some EHS software, and have they improved somewhat by using that software?
From my standpoint, I think a good example is a logistics company that would do their daily inspections of their power industrial trucks, forklifts, material handlers, and would record it manually. Working with them, they found a way to utilize technology in a tablet that allowed them, the operator, to basically do the walk around check, verify it, and it was set up in such a way that unless it passed all the requirements, the operator couldn't operate the vehicle. And as a result, they were able to get real-time data, just like the previous slide showed, about getting the right data, looking at the trends, not just an incident, and being acted in real time. Very large firm, and it looks like a bunch of ants going around in there because they can run 24/7 with about 110 forklifts in a very small area. So it was really critical to do this. Plus, they also used it for near misses, and near hits. And what they found was that they were able to identify some of the operators need additional training and take some operators and be able to convert them to trainers because their ability to work with their co-workers. And again, coming from a colleague, it's a different animal than coming or from an outside source than it is coming from on high or these kinds of things. So yeah, that's a great example of where they basically use this to cut their time of documentation, but they drastically reduce their incident rates, near hits, near hits and near misses with power industrial vehicles.
Excellent. So AMCS and Lancaster have a long-standing partnership, and one of the things that we are working together on is a provision of the OSHA health check service. So we work with Lancaster, and they manage a lot of our customers, and we offer it as a service for them to ensure that they are proactive in being OSHA compliant, of having that sort of health check. So they do that 1 or 2 day assessment, depending on the size of your company, of course, and then you get that full report with pictures, recommendations, and then a follow-up. And so it's ideal for any real company that has people. But I can let Conrad and Dean speak a little bit more on that specific opportunity and the benefits that it could bring for you.
Yeah, sure. We have many different types of clients whenever it comes to safety. So there are companies that may just look for an additional resource for a simple safety training that might be that they may need in industry, or they might need the OSHA 30, or an extensive fall protection course. We have trainers across the United States who are able to be providing these types of trainings for different companies. But then we also have what we call our full service clients that we deal with, where we will be conducting that, day to day on-site assessment. We're going to be taking a look at their safety programs, or if they don't have safety programs, we're going to be conducting audits to make sure that, we get their safety policies where they need to be. And then after we write those safety programs, we conduct an annual training for their employees, where we're going to be covering topics that are relevant, whether it's fall protection or, say, personal protective equipment. We'll be going over the hazard assessment, and give the employees a chance to give their input, if they believe there is any additional personal protective equipment they should be wearing in areas. It gives them the opportunity to bring it to light, and then, once we have their programs in place, conduct an inspection, conduct the training, we also provide unlimited time, remote assistance, whether it's a phone call, whether you have a question about, hey, this issue popped up, how should we address it? What might we want to do to solve this? And, our clients may also have run-ins with OSHA, whether it's a employee complaint or a reported incident, or even a full-blown inspection. We'd be able to assist the company with the entire process up until, if it gets contested to a point where, it's going to be going to a hearing, a trial, an attorney would be best fitted to assist there. However, we assist the companies through the entire process, and yeah, Dane, you want to add anything there?
Sure, and the advantage and pleasure I have working with Lancaster for, it's been a while now, 8 or 10 years, is that using my experience and background, being able to be a set of eyes, an outsider. And oftentimes I'll walk into a manufacturing facility, pretend I'm a raw material just coming into your facility. Walk me through the process as you do what you do, and then send it out to your customer. Or a construction site. Give me a basic understanding of your daily job meetings. What do they consist of? Do you cover safety that will be applicable for the work you're going to be doing on this construction project today or next week? So the real advantage is that to have an outsider or a new set of eyes taking a look at something, even though if we've seen it before, everything is unique. And so as a result, the thing I appreciate is not only can I help folks help themselves, but I also learn things. It's fun. It really is, because you can see that by identifying some of these concerns and areas, you make improvement. And you make improvement, again, that's less money, less time, less personnel spent on unpleasant things, paperwork, insurance, etc., and more time spent on production. Hey, let's get this new idea implemented. Hey, we're able to accelerate this line remodel. Or, hey, we have a new method of a piece of equipment we need to train up on, we'll be more productive. So, yeah, it is just really, it's a win-win situation for anyone that can use someone that would help them get them where they want to go.
Great. Thanks, guys. Perfect. All right. So in terms of resources, there's a couple available for you at home or in your workplace. So if you use this QR code, you'll get multiple reports and some blogs, and of course you can access our AMCS website as well as the Lancaster Safety website as well. So there's Conrad's info on there. But hope everyone enjoyed the webinar today. I really appreciate it. Your time, Conrad and Dean, for stepping in of your busy schedules, saving the world. and really appreciate everyone that attended today as well.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity of being able to serve, and can't wait to see what happens next.
All right. Right, so AMCS will be sharing a booth at the Expo and Trade Show of ASSP on July 22nd to the 24th. Very popular event for all things EHS, lots of vendors, and come and find us at booth 2834. We'll welcome you, and there might be some free swag for some of you as well to come and say hello to us at the booth. So everyone be safe out there, and have a great rest of the day.
Well, excellent. Great job, Phil, Dean, and Conrad. We thank you for sharing your insights and your expertise. Before we do get the Q&A going with the Lancaster safety team, just want to let everyone know about the evaluation survey that we're asking you to complete. The survey will open in a different screen after this webinar. And as always, your input is very important as it helps us to improve our future webcasts. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, and I see there's a few in the queue, just click that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, and click the send button to submit. If we don't get to your question today, all unanswered questions will be forwarded along to our speakers. To get things going, I think it was about midway through the presentation today, hearkening back to that idea of safety first and saying, but do employers have this perception before a costly accident occurs? The attendee says often health and safety courses are organized only for workers and not for employers. And in addition, the topic of safety is still perceived, especially in small companies with, say, less than 15 workers, as superfluous or boring. So I guess what are your thoughts on this and whether employers have this perception?
I changed my background to the tall grass because that's sometimes where we think we are. Yeah, that's an excellent question. And to me, the key is involvement. For example, what I will do is I'll get a most experienced person in that company or organization, no matter what size, and the newest hire, and have them accompany me in the walk around part. What happens is that the new hire learning curve gets shortened because the experienced person helps share some things. But what really is fun is watching the experienced person learn, because the new hire sees things the experienced person keeps looking at all the time, and it becomes a habit, and they don't really notice. So, an accident is what? An unplanned event. And how do we prevent, we eliminate accidents by preventing them, not having unplanned events. So one of the things I find is that kind of thing involvement. Another is something as simple as having a vendor, say for portable fire extinguishers, come in as part of their service, run training, actually light a fire, actually use the extinguisher, actually put it out using the pass method, right? Pull a pin, aim, those kinds of things. So I find that by getting involvement, or something as simple as a small company that has very few resources, just having the owner or management come in and say, folks, I need your help. We need to do better on safety, and here's why. Because we can't afford to have our good people going down. We cannot afford to be paying monies for insurances and claims and, God forbid, attorneys and things like that, instead of being able to improve our production, get better quality, hire more people, get better equipment. So I think oftentimes it's just simply a direct approach. And if there's not an EHS or a similar person in there, you don't have to have a degree or any special training. Everyone should be involved in safety. So you feel the calling, just go up and say, you know what? This doesn't look right. They will get hurt doing it this way. We need to do something different, and get people engaged in those facts. There's a couple good examples.
All righty, thank you. Moving on to the next one. For refresher training, do you have a rule of thumb on cadence and format that keeps engagement high and satisfies auditors?
Well, for me, again, what I try to do there is, first of all, as I mentioned in the webinar about the better get another cup of coffee type thing, this cannot be just simply, Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. That just doesn't work. Especially for most people in, again, industry and construction, we tend to be hands-on visual people. So what I try to do is combine some videos, some what's wrong with this picture, show a scenario, and get people say, okay, what do you see here that is a poor practice? In other words, what's being done correctly and what can be done differently? Notice the key word there, not wrong, but differently. Again, it's so easy to point out the faults, wrong, those kinds of things. Let's find people doing stuff right. And it's amazing how all of a sudden people start taking notice of that. So that's one of the things I try to do in the retraining. I also make sure, again, as part of every agenda, every meeting, I don't care if it's the company cookout, I don't care if it's the holiday party, golf outing, you know, paid time off. Hey, we're all going to the amusement park as a company together on the company, whatever it may be, the event. It can be work related, it can be, people related. Always include some kind of safety aspect in there. And you start getting in that habit, and all of a sudden it becomes part of the culture. And when that's part of your culture, just like high quality, watch what happens to productivity, watch what happens to costs, watch what happens to the kind of people that you meet, that you retain, as well as attract. It's amazing.
What metrics do you find most useful for identifying leading indicators of risk before an incident occurs?
From my perspective, leading indicators are I look at incidences, reports forms. It can be internal. It could be the OSHA 301 incident report. I can take a look at the summary, which is the 300 form, basically what's happened year to date. You can take a look at incident reports, first aid occasions, because first aid is just simply a precursor to something more serious. Take a look at areas where you're finding absenteeism or work where people are basically don't seem to be too happy. It can be something as simply as something's wrong here. I don't know what it is. Can't put my finger on it. And just being able to pay attention to that. All of those kinds of things are great leading indicators that when you pay attention to them, again, you can keep things small and keep that smoke from becoming a conflagration.
Thank you. Again, we still have a few minutes for questions, everyone. So if you have one, you just click that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type the question, and click send. Our next question asked, how do you recommend balancing documentation thoroughness with speed, especially in high volume environments like warehouses or manufacturing floors?
Well, again, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So I understand about the need for speed. But what's interesting, again, if you take the time to do this and go through that investigative process, identify who, what, why, when, where. Don't judge. Just collect as many facts as possible. Try to preserve the incident scene if there is one. Evidence, take photographs. Talk to people that actually witnessed. Talk to people that showed up just after something happened or that heard about it maybe on their lunch break. And gather as much information as possible. You can do that. It takes a little time, but once again, if you take a look at the cost benefit, it's a no-brainer. It just is. Again, every dollar in my companies that I worked with, in any position of management or leadership, for every dollar I spent, I got back 7. It was more than that, but it's hard to measure opportunity cost. 6 recordables, 6 in several decades, mostly in construction, but also in industry. I can tell you for every dollar I spent the day of, by the time I was done, I spent more than 20. And again, that's just the dollars and cents cost. And that usually gets the attention of a lot of folks, especially the CFOs. So I understand the need for speed, but frankly, it's more a need for efficiency. And if you're efficient, you will get the production you need and get it safely.
As we're waiting for additional questions to come in, I know you guys have both been very thorough, but anything top of mind or anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered here today?
I just say, don't be afraid. A lot of people think OSHA is a boogeyman. Uh, they're out to get folks. They pick on companies. I'm here to tell you that they are very, very tough and prescribed on larger firms because they have the resources, personnel, et cetera, more so than a smaller firm. And we know that the number of companies in this country that employ 20 or fewer employees is close to 80%. So the chances of an OSHA inspector showing up at your facility, unless there's a complaint or it's a high hazard industry or falls, again, number one cause of accidental death in this country every year is traffic accidents. 40,000 people get killed in traffic accidents every year. Right behind it at 36,000 is falls. And by the way, you're 11 times safer statistically at work than you are at home. So I guess the thing with this is that by taking that kind of information and starting there, I think this is a way that you can start to get engagement and start, if you will, directing attention where it belongs, not just production, not just market share, not just margin, profitability, personnel, but again, that safety part. It's just adding that word safe, safely, safety to things you do, meetings, events, newsletters, bulletin boards, anything.
Looks like we've got time for one more question, and it asks, how do we go about introducing a safety program when the company has nothing in place and there's no safety culture?
Oh, that's a fun one. Conrad, you can enjoy that too. Um, in my situation, they think they don't have that, but in essence, they do, because for the most part, if you're talking about a career, not a job for pay, it's like your work family, and like every family, you have your ups and downs and your good times and challenging times. I just find that the key is, okay, we're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is insanity, and of course, failure is simply an opportunity to begin again more intelligently. The idea being is that just do something different, because what we're doing right now isn't working. Too many people are getting hurt. We have too much rework. We have too many things where we're putting in submittals and we're getting them back rejected, resubmit, and we're not going to get any extension in time or dollars to do those things. It's just a matter of, again, folks, I need your help. All of us have to be engaged with this. We're looking out for each other. We care about each other. That's why we're all here. And we're here to have some fun, make some money, so forth, so on, whatever our goals or objective is. Let's do it safely. And so just starting with something simple. And again, finding people doing things right. Way to go. And in our company, one thing I did was called the corner program for everybody that operated material handling equipment. And typically you get a little card, training card that says, I'm an operator, I'm a trainer for this particular type of forklift or material handler, whatever it may be. And the idea was that we all held each other accountable. And intentionally, when I started this, I would get on a forklift and not buckle my seatbelt. All right. I wanted to see if anybody would catch me. That's a no-no unless it's a stand-up unit. And so, yes, they just said, hey, well, but you implemented the program. So it doesn't matter. We're looking out for each other. I handed my card. They took a corner off. When they lost all 4 corners, they had to redo it. Now, initially, when I did this, some people said, oh, geez, that guy doesn't like me. He's just going to be picking on me. Said, no, we have checks in there. What was interesting is that we were pretty good at what we did. We became exemplary. We literally had zero, 10 and a half years, zero. So I know it can be done. I've done it. It just takes starting somewhere, doing something differently. And again, not just because I said so as the owner or the president, but because we just can't have people getting hurt. The only acceptable rate of accidents is 0. It's that simple. So let's try to do something different, folks. I need your help. So start with something simple and watch it grow.
Yeah,
Hopefully that helps.
yeah, Dean, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure what was going on, but my mic wasn't working. However, I mean, what I tend to see with a company that is just first instituting that safety program, incentive programs really work. It's something that whenever you have employees who are questioning, hey, is this going to help me? Is this going to help the company? An incentive program that makes the employees really commit to it. The buy-in is something that might be slower to get the ball rolling. Management commitment, is one thing. However, once the employees are showing, that they're taking it seriously, if they see something in the field, they're reporting it back to to the supervisors, or to management. It really helps things move along and helps that safety program really get going. There's starting from no safety culture, it's going to take really everyone to grow it, and yeah, I mean, starting with an incentive program to show, management is doing what we can do to make sure that, these employees are going to, take the bait or buy into it, and I guess that's really a good start.
Definitely have to agree with you. And it doesn't have to be money. When we started, it would be, hey, here's a new high visibility shirt for you, with the company logo on the back. Or it might be, hey, you know what? Here's a pass to a local amusement park for you and your family. Things like that. It doesn't have to be big. But it's amazing how when you incentivize something like that, I mean, most people are competitive in some nature, some very much so. And it's interesting to see how that incentive can really help. So again, as we developed that and we got really sophisticated with this at our heyday, I had the pleasure of writing a guy a 5-figure safety bonus check. I was thrilled to do it because he had come up with some things that made some huge differences and took us from superior to exemplary. And basically, uh, we were able to get projects as a construction company we couldn't get any other way because we weren't paying the huge amounts in insurance or Bureau workers' comp premiums or other things. So it gives you a huge competitive edge, not just in construction, but also in industry. We all know oftentimes margins can be very small, especially those of you in very competitive marketplace, retail, things like that. So if there's a way that I can eliminate, again, these costs, get people engaged, involved, and share some of that, it's a no-brainer. So absolutely, yes, incentives, and again, it doesn't have to be money. It can be things. Hey, even just a way to go in front of all hands. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? So start small and keep on growing.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we have run out of time today, but once again, we hope that you take that time and fill out the forthcoming evaluation survey and give us your feedback. And with that, we end today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast. We'd like to thank Phil Welch, Dean Bortz, Conrad Branchin, everyone at AMCS Group, and all of you who listened in. Thanks and have a safe day.